I would like to, thank you. I would like to call to order the April 3rd meeting of the STP Project Selection Committee. Just a quick reminder, if you haven't already, please be sure to complete the sign-in sheet out in the hallway before you leave. Any members of the audience that would like to make a public comment later on the agenda should fill out a public comment card and hand that card to any of the CMAP staff in the room. As a reminder, this meeting is being broadcast on Zoom and is being recorded. In order for those online to hear what is being said in the room, it's critical that we all use our microphones and identify ourselves when making a motion or a second. For those participating via Zoom, please keep your microphones muted unless you're called upon to speak. When appropriate in the agenda, I will request comments from those online. With that, let's start today with self-introductions of the members here at the table. I'm Cama Dobbs, Chair of the committee representing CMAP, and to my right.
Ann Zhang representing CDOT.
Grant Davis with CDOT. Jeff Shriver, CDOT.
Heather Mullins, Regional Transportation Authority.
John Paul Dupla, FHWA.
Chad Riddle, IDOT Local Roads.
All right, thank you, everyone. We do have the necessary quorum of voting members present. I do also want to point out that Tara Orban, representing the counties, is participating online today as a non-voting member. So before we jump in, oh, never mind. Our first order of business today is agenda changes and announcements. Staff has no agenda changes or additional announcements at this time. Does any member of the committee wish to propose any changes or make any announcements? Okay, seeing none, let's move on to approval of minutes. We have before us the draft minutes of, I have the wrong notes in front of me. We have before us the draft minutes of March, whatever it was, March 11th. Are there any comments or questions on those minutes, or do I have a motion to approve as presented? Motion by Grant. Do I have a second from Ian or Jeff?
Second.
Second by Ian. All those in favor?
Aye.
All right. Next on the agenda are our active program management reports. Starting first with the shared fund status updates. John is going to run through those for us.
Morning, committee members. Few updates to go over from the past 3 weeks since our March 11th meeting. So as Cam said, beginning with the active program report, there were 4 projects that were slated to be on the April letting. Only one of those made it onto it, which was the North Aurora Road project, and 20.1 million of that project was authorized, but that's below the 25 million it had programmed on it. So there's a 4.9 remainder that was left, and we took that remainder left in 2025 and moved into planned use of redistribution. The shared fund used 20.2 million of its nearly $32 million in carryover funds, which had a March 31st expiration date. So that means that 11.8 million is going to be transferred to the redistribution pot. And staff doesn't expect this to cause any project delays, but it will cause staff to do some reshuffling of the active program. The shared fund is still anticipating to use its full 32.5 million mark in June, at which point it will draw from the redistribution fund for the remainder of the year. And staff are still working through March quarterly status update reports, so we'll have more updates on project timelines at the May Project Selection Committee meeting. And then lastly, the last update here is the Streamwoods Illinois 59 bicycle and pedestrian overpass project, which is already conditionally approved for $3,297,750, requested additional $289,000, and had its conditionally approved amount updated to $3,586,750. Turning now to the contingency program status report, there isn't much that has changed since we last met, other than CDOT's Milwaukee Avenue project being moved to contingency list after its letting date dropped back into 2026. With that, that's the updates I have for you on both the active program and the contingency program. So happy to take questions if there are any on any projects.
Are there any questions for John regarding the status of active or contingency projects? All right, seeing none. Regional accounting update. John, if you want to continue.
Yeah, so the regional accounting updates current through March, since our March 11th meeting, obligations have gone from about $57 million to 800, or excuse me, that'd be great if it was 800 million, but 89.9 million. So as mentioned during the shared fund report, the carryover obligation extension deadline was March 31st. Only Lake Council did not meet that obligation deadline amount. They used 1.9 million of 4.8 million total. So this means that about 3 million will be getting transferred to the redistribution fund. And after transfers from Lake Council and the shared fund, the redistribution balance is now sits at $194.5 million. As mentioned at the March meeting, Central Council and Kane Kendall Council have both used their entire mark and are beginning to draw from the redistribution the remainder of the fiscal year, federal fiscal year, and CDOT is still waiting for the transfer request to be fully processed on the state lake project, where at that point they'll be drawing from the redistribution fund. If all programs use what is currently programmed for redistribution, the balance would be reduced from $194.5 million to $59 million by the end of the federal fiscal year. That concludes the regional accounting update. Are there any questions about the accounting?
Any questions for John regarding the accounting update? We're slowly picking away at our balances here. All right, seeing none, thank you very much, John. Next on our agenda is the meaty part that we're all excited for, which is the staff recommended federal fiscal year 2026 through 2030 active and contingency programs. So Doug is here today to walk us through those.
Good morning. Included in your meeting materials today are the staff recommended active and contingency programs for the STP Shared Fund, covering the federal fiscal years 2026 through 2030. A total of 37 applications were received from 29 unique sponsors. The applicants were screened for eligibility and 3 applications were eliminated based upon the initial eligibility. Some of the 34 eligible applications requested consideration in multiple project type categories, leading staff to conduct 48 different evaluations. 5 projects were deemed ineligible and 1 or more project category for failure to meet minimum need or improvement thresholds for that project type that they were evaluated. For the projects evaluated in multiple categories, the category that yielded the highest score for each applicant was identified, and the lower scoring instances were removed from funding consideration. Next slide. Actually, just leave it on this one. CMAP staff proceeded to build the recommended active program included in the packet by stepping through the projects in rank order. Programming funds in the years requested, if funds were available. If funds were not available, staff followed the programming process described in the application booklet, first attempting to accommodate the fully requested funding amount in a later year, and then considering partial funding based upon the minimum amount that the sponsors indicated they could receive. If all the requested phases of a project cannot be accommodated at the minimum requested level, the project was skipped and the next highest ranking project was considered. This process took place in collaboration with staff developing the CMAC and TAP programs so that funding across all 3 programs could be maximized. Staff has also carefully considered how to handle applications that were seeking cost increases for current active program projects. The resulting staff recommendation program is shown here. Next slide. The recommended active program includes 4 new projects and increases for 2 existing projects in federal fiscal years 2027 through 2030. There are 2 new projects within the collar counties, one in the city of Chicago, and one in suburban Cook. The two existing projects are both within suburban Cook County. All eligible projects that applied for the shared fund that are not recommended for funding through the shared fund, CMAQ, CRP, or TAP are recommended to be carried forward in the contingency program, where they can be considered for additional funding that may come to the region or that may be made available through the active program management in the future. Next slide. The next step in our process is to release the staff recommendation for public comment through May 2nd. Following the public comment period, staff will present a summary of the comments and any recommended changes to the programs for your consideration at your May 15th meeting. After committee approval, staff will prepare a tip amendment reflecting the approved program for Transportation Committee consideration to recommend for final approval by the MPO Policy Committee in June. At this time, I'm happy to answer any questions about the process or the recommended program and request that you release the active program and contingency program for public comment period.
Thank you, Doug. Are there questions for Doug regarding the staff recommendation?
I had a question about the State Street reconstruction project for Calumet City. Is it?
Which project? Could you just like speak clear into the microphone more?
Yeah, that's-
Sorry, it's hard. Like I'm in a dead zone.
No, that's fine. I'm sorry. Is that better?
Yeah.
The State Street reconstruction project, is Calumet City the actual sponsor, or is it being implemented through another agency?
I believe Calumet City is the sponsor.
So my only comment would be the 1 year to get through phase 2 is tight for them to get to construction. So I don't know if there's a way that, like, I guess I would encourage you to encourage them to try to be ready earlier and maybe request funding for that in 28, because 1 year to get through phase 2 so they can hit construction in the following years.
Just so you know, staff will be requesting to sit down with Calumet City because we have some additional questions on, there's already existing funding on that project and it's kind of broken off. So there may be some changes to the program. We just like, there's only so many things we could get to before today's meeting. And so that one was like, we'll see how that one plays out.
Okay.
Yeah, just so you know, yeah, staff has more questions
Yeah,
as well.
that was the only like kind of
Okay.
flag that I saw.
And Grant, I think that's a great thing to point out. And with the project having some existing funding, some of it's STPL, there's some other shared fund on it. We do need to sit down and figure out, you know, can we direct the current funds all to the engineering and then direct the new out year funds to construction? And is this the right amount? So we've got some questions about the total cost, but wanted to program what they applied for in this cycle, and then we need to sit down with them. So. Heather?
Yeah, I just wanted to express some disappointment that not a single one of the transit projects that was submitted for funding was included in the active program, whether it was submitted by a transit agency or a municipality or a county, and despite ranking fairly high. So I'm just wondering how some of those projects were left out or what the decision process was there, because I'm seeing even, the CTA, PACE, and Metra submittals actually ranked fairly high, higher than some of these roadway projects, but weren't included in the active program.
All right, so if you look at the sheet that looks like this, it's kind of got, we call it the builder sheet, but it's got a total at the top, they got totals at the top and everything. You can see the projects. So there was, yes, there was one transit project that was skipped over, CTA's Irving Park Stations accessibility. They had requested funding in the near years where we didn't have, and it was multiple phases, and it just, when things typically have multiple phases and they requested, the minimum accepted was the total amount. So we could put it all in the out years, but how do they phase that in? Like we can't, there was no way to accommodate it within what was being requested and what was available. That was the only transit agency project that was skipped over.
I guess just a follow-up question or
Yeah.
maybe a comment. I think moving forward, I know we had spent a lot of time looking at the selection criteria. But I think we need to do a little more looking at it to make these transit projects a little more competitive in this program. I think there are a lot of good applications that came in, and the fact that none of them are included in the active program is concerning. And maybe it's not the selection criteria we need to look at. Maybe we need to look at how we're actually formulating the program. Maybe there's a set aside for transit projects so that they're not all left out of the process, leaving with us with a totally roadway focused program in future years. But I think that's something we need to consider and look at moving forward.
Yeah. I will ask that you also look at the CMAC and TAP program, specifically the CMAC program. When we start combining them all together, there's a little bit more, transit has the majority of the funding when you look at all three combined together.
And Heather, I think we definitely want to have that conversation because I think when the shared funds started, we had, our 8 project types that we really want to move forward as a region. And it seems like the bus speed and the transit stations are not bubbling up to the top. I don't know if that is flaws in the criteria. I think something, sometimes what happens when I think what we saw with the CTA project that was skipped over is, the applicant asked for an amount in 3 different years. We only had funding to program in 2 because of the active program management policies that we have for STP. We can't stack that in 1 year or they'll miss their active program management milestones. So figuring out how to maximize the competitiveness of the applications by looking at things like that, I think is part of the due diligence we need to do ahead of the next cycle too. So yeah, it's disappointing because we've got these two project types that, this committee deliberated a long time and agreed that those were important project types for this program and they just aren't bubbling to the top end and we need to figure out why. So, are there other comments or questions? Tara, I want to give you a chance if there was anything from the counties to comment on as well. Feel free to unmute.
No, thank you. Not at this time. Good discussion, though.
Okay, thanks. All right, if there's no other questions for Doug, can I get a motion to release the staff recommended program for public comment through May 2nd?
So moved.
Moved.
Second?
Second.
All right, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. All right, motion carries. The staff recommendation will get posted by tomorrow morning and be available for public comment through May 2nd. And moving on then to other business. Is there any other business that any member of the committee wants to bring forward? I do just want to take a minute to welcome back John Paul Diepla from Federal Highway Administration, who had to miss our last meeting, but is back here in our Chicago urban office and fully at our service again, and we're very appreciative of that. All right. All right, seeing no other business, is there any public comment today? Staff did not receive any ahead of the meeting. No one in the room is looking to comment. Anyone online wishing to comment, raise your hand or go ahead and unmute and state your name. Going once.
I do have a quick comment. I'm Angela King from the CTA. Yes, it
Hey,
is
Angela.
very how are you? Good morning, everyone. Yes, it's a little disappointing that we didn't get anything based on the out years. I'm trying to recall, was this mentioned prior to the application process?
Yeah, the application asks you to request funding in individual years. And so the CTA request was for, looking at the sheet, like 1.9 million in 26, 4 million in 27, and 2 million in 28. And so because we already have projects programmed in those years, we were able to slip a little bit of funding into 28, but there was nothing else available when we got down to your project. So,
Okay, so I'm sorry. So reduced funding wouldn't have been acceptable? I mean, sometimes when we apply, we don't expect to get the full request with hopefully that we could get something.
Yeah, there is a question in the application, Angela, that says what's the minimum that you'll accept? And CTA's response to that question was the full amount. So you did not indicate that you could accept less than the full amount.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. Any other public comment from online? Feel free to unmute.
Yes, thank you. This is John Paul Jones from Grover Englewood and Sustainable Englewood Initiatives. And one of the things we've always been concerned about is that with this program, it's always asked for the municipal units to apply and to move things forward. But oftentimes, when you have staff shifts in some of these agencies, many projects that has been advocated for many years are oftentimes dropped off or forgotten or ignored. And so we got to find a way to allow for some friendly recommendations to be considered or at least acknowledged, because far too many years, too many projects just don't get on the docket. Oftentimes because the agency you would suspect will care enough to include it necessarily don't care or have an interest, or there may be other priorities versus a downtown project versus a neighborhood project. And so we got to find some way to kind of allow for some friendly recommendations to be entered in. So as the out years go forward, we can recount notes and say, yeah, this project is worth review, even if the agency never asks for it, particularly if it's a project that may have a high count that can contribute to the overall 2050 plan. And so I just want to recommend that, because there's so many projects that we like to see go forward, and we want to avoid what have happened to us on the south side, particularly with the red line extension, where you guys, decade after decade, repeating yourself about what you want and what you need. And we just want to, again, just consider those kind of procedural opportunities that we can kind of flip the script on getting more projects plugged in. Even if it's just 10% of the project cost, allow us to figure out ways to raise the 100% needed, but to show that the region cares about a certain project, even if you get 20%, 30%, let it be, so we can begin to kind of raise the funds locally in other ways. But again, thank you very much for this opportunity.
Thank you, John Paul, for those comments. And I think, as we come out of this call for project cycle, we'll spend the next year or so talking about our methodology going into the next call for project cycle. So certainly we can talk about ways for non-government agencies to approach the appropriate project sponsors to ensure that projects get submitted. So thank you for that comment. Any additional comments from those online? I don't see any more hands going once, going twice. All right. Thank you everyone for your comments. Our next meeting will be held on May 15th. And as Doug mentioned in his presentation, at that time, we'll be looking for a vote on a final active and contingency program to move up to the Transportation Committee and MPO Policy Committee. So with no other business before the committee today, do I have a motion to adjourn? Grant, and I'm going to count that as a second, Jeff, who tried to get in there ahead of Grant. Anyone opposed to?
I'm not a voting
adjournment?
member. I'm not sure I can make a motion.
Nope, you cannot. Sorry. All right. All in favor?
Aye.
All right. This meeting is now adjourned at 9:56 a.m. Thank you, everyone.